Well, today I'm going to talk about two people that impacted my life as far as being an upstander or standing up for injustices or for other people. The first is my mother, who taught me to stand as a person, and the other is my mentor, who really taught me how to stand professionally. I'm going to focus a little bit more on my mother. And the reason I do that is because our stories are deeply intertwined. She was the middle child of 12, born in 1929, a baby of the Great Depression. She was a tough woman and valued hard work, which she instilled in me. She knew a responsibility as a young age because she was there to raise her brothers and sisters after an abusive grandfather abandoned the family. In fact, my mother stepped in between my grandfather and grandmother, and it was because of her that she saved her life, and my grandfather abandoned the family. My mother was dealt hand after hand of what I would call very unfortunate circumstances, but was resilient and always found a way to bounce back or see the situation as it was. She chose how to show up, and throughout life, she instilled in me this same sense of choice, even when I was up against things out of my control. Even if I couldn't play Little League because I was a girl, something I couldn't control, I thought about how I would show up and how to frame my protest with the Little Leaguers. My dear mother passed away on July 28, 2012, after a dignified and hard-fought battle with Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had scheduled a visit to see her for Mother's Day and arrived on May 16th to find her weak and feeling drained. On my second day there, she was admitted to the hospital and fought for her life for the rest of the summer. For weeks, she endured conflicting medical opinions, multiple medications, blood draws, IVs, pressure sores, rehab and therapies to learn to walk again, pain and bad food, and all in that suffering with all the people crying and shuffling around her. She continued to keep a positive attitude, encouraging her nurses and staff and always saying thank you and good job to others. One night after a long day of rehab and routine, standing there beside her, I just broke. Why is this happening to you? You're such a good person who loves God and who never smoked or drank. It just doesn't make sense. You always looked out for others and you gave of your time and resources. Why would this happen to you? And my mother calmly looked up at me with her steely blue eyes and gently touched my arm. And she said, God, reason, luck have nothing to do with this. The most important thing now is who I am in this moment. How I show up and choose to live even now facing death. My mother from her deathbed sent a message to me loudly and clearly. We have a choice on how we act. We have a choice on how we show up in each moment of our lives. And even though she was dying a painful death from cancer, she chose to show up with gratitude for her nurses, a smile for her physical therapist, and a childlike appreciation as ice cream melted on her swollen tongue. She knew that her choice to show up with love, hope, and determination impacted not only her life, but those around her. Through her actions, she changed a little part of the world she was in and a large part of the world I was in. I was sworn into office on my mother's birthday, and I swore that day I would remember her lesson and choose how to show up each day. She taught me the importance of civility and political identity without saying it that way. Take responsibility for decisions and actions. Treat people with dignity and respect. Show up and choose how to show up constructively. My name is Melissa Wintrow, and I'm a state representative here in Boise.
This is Another Man Done Gone, performed by Georgette Dashiell.
Another man done gone. Another man done gone. Another man done gone. Another man done gone from the county. Didn't know his name.
Welcome to the Voices of Idaho with Dan Prinzing and Adam Thompson.
Hey there.
Today joining us, Melissa Wintrow. Melissa, thank you. There is one word that so resonated, of course, in your story, and it is that to be an upstander is a choice. Where do you think that choice comes from? Is there, is that spirit, is that will, is that determination? What gives somebody to have that courage to make that choice?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. As a kid, my mom really demonstrated the importance of standing up. And even as a kid, I couldn't take a bully. In fact, I'm not proud of it today, but I actually had some physical altercations protecting some of my friends from bullies. And I just could never take it. But I think also through, mentoring, coaching, leadership, you learn to put those energies in a different way. And you realize, I think through that mentoring, how to actually show up and stand up for folks. So I always had this kind of gut reaction, but I think it was because of all the things I heard from my mother. I saw how hard she had it in her life, and I saw her standing up and teaching me to stand up for others who couldn't stand up for themselves, just like she stood up for her mother.
What would you say to those who say, I can't do that? That's just not me.
You know what? I think a big part of doing something is just facing the natural fear that's associated with it. There is no getting around it. Fear is a natural and probably normal reaction to many things, and it is essential, I think, just to walk through it. I discovered that when I ran for office. I discovered that when I was at Michigan State working with my mentor, who I mentioned briefly. There were a lot of racial conflicts going on. And, it was a scary thing to do, but to walk to a group of students who, a different race than I am, and to talk with them and to really address the conflict and to let my guard down, you just have to do it. And after that, I reaped the rewards and benefits of that. Facing that fear is probably the most important thing that we do, and just walk through it.
Is that who you carry into the state legislature?
I think so. When I was first elected, I was really nervous and scared because this is a great community. I mean, to represent District 19 and all the wonderful members, I was legitimately nervous, and probably for the first time practiced restraint, but also had to walk through any fear that I had. And I face that all the time. On the floor this last session, when somebody was putting forward an anti-affirmative action bill, it was not a pleasant experience, but that's what I was elected to do. And I draw on some of those past mentors for that strength to walk through that fear and know it's going to be okay.
We so appreciate that, because in center programming, we introduce, always in the acronym ACT, that the C is choose. That to be an upstander is a choice, just like being a bystander is a choice. What we're saying, though, at this time, it is not permissible to do nothing. That the choice to be silent is no longer acceptable. That this is a time when we each need to be held accountable. That if we are to confront injustice, there has to be that something within each of us that will come to the forefront. The courage, the compassion. When you look throughout the community, or even let's go larger, the state, where do you see us moving in confronting injustice? Are we standing up as a state?
I think it depends on how you define injustice. I think there are a group of us that recognizes, like you said, that silence is never acceptable. It wasn't acceptable in the past. It can't be acceptable now. But there's an awakening. There is a new awareness about, I think, the deep history of racism in our country, and that it's essential that we're not driven by guilt or suspended in time through emotion and languish in that, but to recognize our responsibility if we hold any position of power and authority, and to make change so that we do have an equal playing field, because we don't have one right now. Now, in this state, there are people all over the map on what we see as injustice. So I think it's essential that we remain, I know for myself, is to remain a representation, a vocal representation of what I believe and the values that my community represents, and to try to bring those forward as best I can through conversation, through legislation, through problem solving, whatever that may be.
Well, we're going to have those in the community who say, yeah, that may be a problem, but it's not a problem here. Oh, we don't have that here. We're different here. How do we respond to that in recognizing that we all bear the responsibility of a history of injustice?
Yeah, I've actually heard that already many times in the last several months, that, oh, that doesn't happen in Idaho. What I say is that Idaho is a part of the United States, it's still part of the world. And we are not immune to our socialization here, and it's no different than in other places. In fact, if we refresh our history about Idaho, we know that Idaho was a harbor for folks leaving the Civil War. In fact, I talked to someone recently whose great-great-great-grandfather escaped to Idaho after lynching a black man in North Carolina. So Idaho has a very distinguished history when it comes to racism and discrimination. We have overcome some things in our state, but we have a lot to overcome. And some of it is our own ignorance or reluctance to really examine that history. History is telling. Yeah. So I would encourage everybody to, everybody who's white in particular, to find easily accessible documents to really understand our history. Jill Gill at Boise State writes extensively on our history here in Idaho.
I so appreciate that, because what you're speaking to is the power of education, and that we don't know what we don't know, and that this is a time more than any that the onus is on me to educate myself to what are the issues.
Well, and I think too, for folks who are white like me, there is that sense of, oh my God, how did I not know this? I am so ignorant. I feel terrible. Well, I think a lot of white people are experiencing some pain because they weren't taught this. They're kind of like, I was lied to. And so it is our job to look at what textbooks we're using in K-12 and colleges, and really think about and portray the true history of our country instead of the little segments we get. A good example of this, I was watching a live segment where they were pulling down a Confederate monument, and somebody made mention of the Vice President of the Confederacy, which I felt ignorant about. I immediately went to Google because I was curious and discovered the Vice President of the Confederacy wrote the Cornerstone speech, which solidified that Negroes in our country were inferior and that they were justified in their treatment. Wow, how did I not know that? I just felt lied to in my history classes. Well, no longer do I need to feel lied to. We have access to so much information. We can Google things. We can look things up. It is our responsibility to do so and to question and have that curiosity and then do something with it.
I like that there's so many of the folks that have come in to share their stories, to be a part of this, are actually saying now is the time for conversation too. That we do have to begin to talk with one another. I know some of these conversations are occurring awkwardly even in homes, where we're having to address with family members attitudes, practices. This is not who we are. This is not what we're going to condone. Do you think we're going to get some of that flavor in the state legislature? That who really are we as a state? Do we care for each other?
I would hope that we would have that conversation. I'm not convinced it will happen. But it is our responsibility, especially me as a white person, to get uncomfortable. It's the least I can do. Because when I hear I had a friend over at a safe distance. He was visiting from Seattle. He's from Uganda. He's black. And I said to him, drive safely home to your mother-in-law's house, because it was dark. And I just thought, because it's dark and deer. And immediately said, oh no, I will be safe. I know where to keep my hands. I know if I'm pulled over, all my taillights are working. And my heart sunk. I don't have to live that every day. And it is essential that we figure out how to change the systems in our country so people don't have to live that way every day. And so the least I can do is have a little discomfort and have hard conversations with people, including people in positions of power and authority.
And for that, Melissa, we thank you. We thank you for not only your service to the people of Idaho, but we thank you for your voice and your commitment that we can become the best versions of ourselves.
I think we can. It's a choice, and we have to walk actively into that choice. As my mother taught me, in the face of even death, she chose who she wanted to be at that given moment.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, the Voices of Idaho.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of the Wassman Center podcast. As usual, if you're a musician and you have some music related to our theme this year of being an upstander, please consider sending it our way at info@wassmancenter.org. Thanks for listening to this episode, and we'll have another one of these up on the 1st of February, and we'll see you then. Have a good one.
I need someone beside me to help me find my way back home. 'Cause this world is full of anger, and I've been walking through some pain. So if we walk this road together, we can find our way back home again. It's a home of many colors, no ceilings and no walls, but there is room for all our brothers, with no graffiti in the halls. We can share this road together, so if you walk with me, my friend, with you right here beside me, we'll find a home with peace again. It's a home of many colors, no ceilings and no walls, but there is room for all our brothers, with no graffiti in the halls. We can share this world together, so if you walk with me, my friend, with you right here beside me, we'll find